In June 2016, we had the referendum, and that expressed the will of the people, but the will of the people isn't something fixed or unchangeable. If the circumstances change, the will can change, the views can change. We knew that we voted to leave the European Union, but we didn't yet know the new relationship. We've got the right to rethink. It's not that we have to rethink, but we've got the right to rethink if we want to. So when we see this new relationship, and I think the new relationship will be one in which Britain is either trying to keep very close to Europe, in which case we'll have to obey Europe's rules, but we'll have lost our seat at the table of decision making, or alternatively, it'll be very far from Europe, in which case the damage to Britain economically will be quite significant. I think when people see this new relationship, they're going to ask themselves again the question, well, is this really worth it? I think we also have to deal with the underlying reasons why people voted for Brexit. Now, those reasons were often to do with issues like immigration, concerns about immigration, concerns about communities left behind, economic and cultural alienation. I think you have to deal with those reasons. Now, some of that can be dealt with by Europe also coming forward and saying, look, the circumstances that gave rise to Brexit in Britain are also circumstances that obtain in a lot of Europe as well. If there's an intelligent response from the UK, there could also be an intelligent response from Europe that says, okay, let's try and meet you halfway around things like freedom of movement, not interfere with the basic principle, but make sure it operates in a fairer way and deal with some of the underlying issues that gave rise to Brexit. If Europe was to take that attitude, then I think that would facilitate a change of mind in Britain. Is this worth pulling Britain out of the biggest political union in the world, the largest commercial market in the world, to which we're tied, physically by the Channel Tunnel, commercially by the single market, historically by all the ties that bind Europe together, and in geopolitical terms where the world in the 21st century will have America in the west, you'll have China in the east, and Europe, in order to represent its interests and its values, has got to stay strong, and Britain should be part of that bloc. If you're a medium-sized population country like Germany, like France, like the UK, then you've got to band together collectively, because otherwise your bargaining power in the world is going to be too weak with these major large population players. Over 2/3 of the young people were voting to stay in Europe, 2/3 of the over 65s voting to leave. And I think for younger people particularly, they see their future as being part of the world in which membership of the European Union is not contrary to our British national interests, but part of it. In many ways, Europe's become a kind of lightning rod for a whole lot of anxieties and concerns that people have that really aren't concerns that are about Europe, but are about people's worry, which is very real, that they've lost control over their own lives, lost it culturally through forces of immigration, lost it economically through forces of globalization. And my point is that the political leaders have got to respond to those anxieties and not end up in a situation where a kind of populism that rides the anger but doesn't provide the answers takes control. And this is the risk in Britain, but frankly you can see this all over the Western world. And Brexit is merely part of that movement in the West that's a big reaction against this process of globalization. And we've got to take account of it and deal with the underlying reasons for it, because otherwise if we end up obstructing globalization, or for example Britain pulls itself out of Europe as a result of these worries, we'll just do ourselves long-term damage.